I was starving because of my stepdad's insane diet rules. I finally stood up for myself, and you won't believe what happened next. I'm Aaron, 16M, and I've been living with my mom Margaret, 42F, and stepdad George, 45M, for the past 3 years. Things weren't always this complicated. When I was younger, it was just me and my mom. My dad left before I was born, and mom never really talked about him. We got by okay. Mom worked long hours as a nurse, but she always made sure I had what I needed. I remember how excited mom was when she first started dating George. She'd come home from their dates with this big smile on her face, happier than I'd seen her in years. George seemed nice enough at first. He'd come over for dinner, bring me cool gadgets from the electronics store he managed, and take us both out for pizza on weekends. When they got married and George moved in, things changed a bit. He was stricter than mom about bedtimes and chores, but nothing too crazy. The real problem started about a year ago when George decided to get healthy. See, George had always been a big guy. Not huge, but definitely carrying extra weight. Last winter, he had a health scare, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, the works. His doctor warned him he needed to make some lifestyle changes. That's when George went off the deep end. He dove headfirst into every fad diet and health trend he could find online. First it was keto, then paleo, then raw vegan. He'd spend hours watching YouTube videos about clean eating and detoxing. Every week it was some new superfood or supplement he swore would change everything. I didn't think much of it at first. Adults are weird about diets, right? But then George started pushing his new habits on me and mom. He threw out all our processed junk and started doing all the grocery shopping and cooking. Suddenly, our meals were nothing but tiny portions of grilled chicken or fish with steamed veggies. No pasta, no bread, no rice, barely any seasoning. George got rid of anything with sugar or carbs, saying they were poison. Now, I'm a pretty active kid. I've played soccer since I was 5, and this year I made the varsity basketball team too. Between practices, games, and just being a growing teenager, I'm always hungry. These bird-sized meals George was making just weren't cutting it. I tried explaining to George and my mom that I needed more food, especially carbs, to fuel all my activities. George would just lecture me about how carbs and sugar are addictive and how I needed to train my body to run on vegetables and lean protein. My mom mostly went along with whatever George said, not wanting to rock the boat. Things got worse as George got more extreme. He started forbidding any food in the house he didn't approve of. Once, he caught me eating a granola bar I'd gotten from a friend at school and completely flipped out. He made me empty my backpack and locker, convinced I was smuggling in junk food. I started feeling constantly tired and irritable. My performance in sports began to suffer. I couldn't keep up during practices and games like I used to. My coaches noticed and asked if everything was okay at home. I was too embarrassed to explain, so I just made excuses about not sleeping well. The situation came to a head last week. I had a big soccer tournament coming up. It was a really important one with college scouts attending. I knew I needed to carb load to perform my best. The night before the tournament, I asked George if we could please have some pasta or potatoes with dinner. George completely lost it. He went on a long rant about how I was addicted to carbs and needed to break my addiction. He said I was ungrateful for all the pure, healthy food he was providing and that I was trying to sabotage his health journey. I got angry and told him he was being ridiculous. Pasta isn't heroin, it's just food that active people need. The argument escalated. George told me if I wanted junk food I could buy and cook it myself. So I asked my mom if she'd take me grocery shopping to get some normal food. She hemmed and hawed, clearly not wanting to go against George. I got frustrated and said something like, "So you're just going to let your husband starve your kid?" Which set off another round of yelling. In the end, no one took me shopping. I was so desperate for energy that I snuck into the kitchen late at night and ate a bunch of peanut butter straight from the jar. It was the only calorie-dense food left in the house that George hadn't thrown out. The next day at the tournament, I felt weak and dizzy. I could barely keep up with the other players. We lost badly, and I knew it was partly because I was running on empty. One of the college scouts pulled me aside afterward and asked if I was feeling okay, saying I seemed off my game. I was so embarrassed I wanted to cry. When we got home, George had the nerve to lecture me about my poor performance, saying it proved I needed to commit fully to his diet plan. I couldn't take it anymore and yelled at him, telling him his stupid diet was the reason I played so badly. We got into another huge fight, with my mom trying unsuccessfully to play peacemaker. I'm at my breaking point. I've tried talking to my mom privately, but she just tells me to go along with what George wants for the sake of family harmony. I feel like I'm being deprived of basic nutrition. George keeps saying I'll thank him later when I'm super healthy as an adult, but I'm worried about my health now. I don't know what to do. We live in a pretty rural area, so there's no public transportation and nowhere within walking distance to buy food. I don't have my own money to buy groceries even if I could get to a store. And I'm worried if I tell someone at school, it'll cause even more problems at home. So Reddit, Ida for refusing to eat George's health food and demanding regular meals appropriate for an active teenager? Should I just suck it up and eat what I'm given? Or am I right to push back against this extreme diet being forced on me? Edit, thanks for all the responses. To clarify a few things. 1. I have no health issues that require a special diet. I'm at a normal weight for my height and very active/athletic. 2. George is not a doctor or nutritionist. He gets all his info from YouTube videos and random health blogs. 3. My dad isn't in the picture. He left when I was a baby and I've never met him. 4. We live in a pretty rural area. There's no public transportation and nowhere within walking distance to buy food. Update 1. Wow, I wasn't expecting this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for the advice and support. A lot has happened in the past week, so here's an update. After reading all your comments, I realized I needed to take more drastic action. The next day after school, I went to see my guidance counselor, Mr. Roberts. I've always liked Mr. Roberts. He's this chill older guy who actually listens to kids instead of just lecturing. I was nervous, but I told him everything that was going on at home with the food situation. Mr. Roberts was really concerned. He asked a lot of questions about how long this had been going on and how it was affecting me. When I told him about the soccer tournament disaster, he got this serious look on his face and asked if he could call my mom in for a meeting. I was scared about how my mom would react, but I agreed. The meeting happened 2 days later. My mom, Mr. Roberts, and I sat down together in his office after school. At first, my mom tried to downplay everything, saying George was just health conscious and I was exaggerating. But Mr. Roberts was amazing. He explained how dangerous it is for a growing, athletic teenager to be on such a restrictive diet. He even pulled up some nutrition guidelines to show my mom. I could see my mom starting to realize how serious this was. She got really quiet and then started crying. She admitted she knew things had gotten out of hand, but she felt stuck between me and George. She talked about how she'd always struggled with her own weight and how she was afraid of undermining George's health goals. It was the first time I'd ever heard her open up like that. Mr. Roberts was really kind but firm. He suggested family counseling, but also stressed that immediate changes needed to happen with my diet. He even offered to help my mom find a nutritionist who could work with our whole family to develop a healthy, balanced meal plan that would work for everyone. My mom agreed to take me grocery shopping the day after school. It felt surreal walking through the store, being allowed to put normal food in the cart again. We bought lots of whole grain bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and other healthy carbs. We also got peanut butter, cheese, and other calorie-dense foods for me to snack on. I kept waiting for my mom to change her mind, but she seemed determined. When we got home, George freaked out, just like I knew he would. He started yelling about how we were poisoning our bodies and throwing away all our progress. He accused my mom of not supporting him and said we were trying to make him fat again. It got pretty ugly. But something had shifted in my mom. Maybe it was the talk with Mr. Roberts, or maybe she'd finally reached her own breaking point. Whatever it was, she stood her ground. She told George that while she appreciated his health journey, he had taken things too far and it was negatively impacting me. She said from now on, there would be regular food options at every meal for me, and George could eat whatever he wanted. George didn't take it well. He sulked for days and made snide comments every time I ate something he didn't approve of. He'd dramatically leave the room if I was eating pasta or roll his eyes when Mom made sandwiches for lunch. But my mom didn't back down. She started cooking separate meals, one for George and one for me and her. The change in how I felt was almost immediate. I finally felt full and energized again. I stopped feeling dizzy during practices and could actually concentrate in class. I even noticed my mood improving. I hadn't realized how irritable the constant hunger had made me. The real test came this weekend. I had another soccer tournament, but this time I was properly fueled. The difference was night and day. I had energy to spare, my head was clear, and I played some of the best games of my life. We made it to the finals and I even scored the winning goal. My mom came to watch and I could see her tearing up from the sidelines. After the game, she hugged me so tight and kept saying how proud she was. On the drive home, she apologized again for letting things get so bad. We had a long talk about everything, her relationship with George, her own issues with food and body image, how we could move forward as a family. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it felt like the first real, honest talk we'd had in ages. Things are still tense at home. George barely speaks to me and gives my mom the cold shoulder. He's still making his separate meals and not eating with us. I know this isn't over yet. George clearly has some serious food issues he needs to work through, and I'm worried about what this is doing to my mom's marriage. But for now, at least I'm getting the nutrition I need. I'm sleeping better, performing better in school and sports, and just feeling more like myself again. Thank you all again for giving me the push I needed to speak up and get help. I don't know what would have happened if I just kept suffering in silence. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and unfortunately, things have gotten worse at home. At first, George seemed to be grudgingly accepting the new food situation. He'd make faces when he saw me eating pasta or bread, but he kept his comments to himself. My mom was sticking to her guns about making separate meals. I was feeling great, my energy was up, I was performing better in sports, and I even grew an inch. But the tension in the house was unbearable. George and my mom barely spoke to each other. They slept in separate rooms and George spent most of his time either at work or locked in the home office, watching more health guru videos. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time. Things came to a head last week. I came home from school to find George and my mom in a screaming match. Apparently, George had gone through my mom's phone and found texts between her and Mr. Roberts. They'd been in contact about some family counseling options and resources for dealing with disordered eating. George completely lost it. He accused my mom of betraying him, of trying to fatten him up again, and of choosing me over him. He brought up old arguments and issues from years ago that I'd never even heard about. He said if we wouldn't follow his lifestyle, then he wanted us out. My mom tried to calm him down, explaining that she was just trying to find a way for our family to be healthy together. But George wasn't having it. He just got more and more worked up, saying we were trying to sabotage all his hard work and progress. Finally, George stormed out of the house. He peeled out of the driveway in his car and we didn't hear from him for 2 days. Those 2 days were awful. My mom was a mess, crying, barely sleeping, constantly checking her phone. I felt terrible. Even though I knew it wasn't really my fault, I couldn't help feeling guilty for causing all this drama. I tried to comfort my mom, but I didn't know what to say. We ordered pizza one night and just sat on the couch watching old movies together, like we used to before George came into our lives. It was nice, but there was this heavy sadness hanging over everything. George came back on Sunday night. He was calmer, but cold. He told my mom he'd been thinking things over and he decided to give us an ultimatum. Either we all follow his diet plan 100% or he wants a divorce. He said he refuses to live in a house full of toxins and temptation. My mom was devastated. She and George have only been married for 4 years, but I know she really loves him. She begged him to reconsider, to try counseling, anything. But he wouldn't budge. He said he'd given us a chance to see the light and we'd rejected it, so now he had to protect his own health and well-being. Now my mom is torn. She keeps going back and forth, crying, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to tell her to just give in to George so she doesn't lose her marriage. I hate seeing her so upset. But another part of me is furious that he's putting her in this position. And I'm scared of going back to how things were before, always hungry and tired and miserable. I don't know what's going to happen. My mom has been on the phone with her sister a lot, talking about maybe going to stay with her for a while to figure things out. I'm scared and stressed and don't know how to help. I just want things to go back to normal, but I don't even know what normal is anymore. This whole situation has made me think a lot about family and what it means. Before George, it was just me and mom against the world. We were happy, even if things weren't perfect. Now I feel like I'm competing with George for my mom's attention and loyalty. It's a horrible feeling. I'll update again when I know more. Thanks for listening. Reddit. It helps to have somewhere to share all this. Update 3. Final update here, and I'm happy to say things have taken a turn for the better. After George's ultimatum, my mom was a wreck for a few days. But then something in her seemed to snap. She sat me down and apologized for letting things get so out of control. She said she realized she'd been prioritizing her marriage over my health and well-being, and that wasn't okay. She told me about her own struggles with self-esteem and how she'd always worried about not being enough for her partners. It was eye-opening to hear her open up like that. My mom called her sister, my Aunt Carla, and explained everything. Aunt Carla was furious when she heard what had been going on. She immediately offered to let us come stay with her while we figured things out. Aunt Carla has always been the cool aunt. She's single, travels a lot for her job as a photographer, and has this awesome apartment in the city. So last weekend, while George was at a wellness retreat, my mom and I packed up our essential belongings and moved to Aunt Carla's house a few towns over. My mom left George a letter explaining that she couldn't accept his ultimatum and needed space to reevaluate their relationship. Living with Aunt Carla has been amazing. Her place isn't huge, but it feels so much more relaxed than our house did. There's no tension in the air, no one policing what anyone eats. Aunt Carla has been incredibly supportive, listening to my mom talk through everything and helping her find a good therapist to start working through her issues. And the food. Aunt Carla loves to cook, and she's been teaching me how to make all kinds of dishes. We've made homemade pizza, lasagna, stir fries, you name it. Everything is balanced and delicious. I forgot how much joy there could be in food when it's not treated like the enemy. George has been blowing up my mom's phone with calls and texts. At first, he was angry, calling us weak-willed for not sticking to his plan. He accused my mom of kidnapping me and threatened to call the police. Aunt Carla helped my mom document everything and even spoke with a lawyer friend of hers, just in case. As the days have gone by, George's tone has shifted. Now he's begging my mom to come back, saying he'll change. He's promised to see a therapist and work on his issues. Part of me hopes he means it, but another part is scared to go back to how things were. My mom is standing firm though. She told George that if he wants any chance at saving their marriage, he needs to get professional help for his disordered eating and controlling behavior. She said she won't even consider moving back until he's been in therapy for at least a few months and shows real change. As for me, I'm doing great. I've gained back some weight I'd lost and have so much more energy. My new school is bigger than my old one, with more sports options. I joined the soccer team here and the coach has been really impressed with my skills. I'm even thinking about trying out for the swim team in the spring. But the best part is how much closer I've gotten with my mom. We talk more openly now, about real stuff. She's told me more about her life before I was born, including some hard things about her relationship with my dad. I feel like I understand her better now, and she understands me too. I know we still have a long road ahead. My mom and George have a lot to work through, and who knows if their marriage will survive. There's still a lot of uncertainty about what will happen next year. Will we move back? Will I change schools again? But for now, I'm just grateful to feel safe, healthy, and cared for. This whole experience has taught me a lot about standing up for myself and the importance of balance in all things, including diet. I've started reading more about nutrition, real science, not fad diet stuff, and I'm interested in maybe studying sports medicine or nutrition in college. Thank you all again for your support and advice throughout this journey. I couldn't have found the courage to speak up without you. If there's one thing I hope people take from my story, it's this: trust your body and don't let anyone shame you for taking care of your basic needs. Health looks different for everyone, and no one diet fits all. I probably won't post any more updates unless something major changes. But know that your kindness and support made a real difference in my life. Thank you, Reddit.